All right, so our next talk in track 3, ChatAPT, a cybersecurity red team framework which demonstrates the emerging threat made possible by leveraging GPT to elevate high-fidelity social engineering effort to an unlimited scale. Please welcome Jonathan Todd.
Testing. Yeah, so it's working.
And if you have questions after his talk, everybody has a mic at their desk. So hit the button and then ask the question.
Can you all hear me okay? There we go. All right. So a little bit about me. I am a super nerd. Last year I came here and walked into a talk about the Pyramid of Pain. Had no idea it was by the guy who made it. So I went and had a custom neon sign made for the Pyramid of Pain. So I've got you all beat. Love hard problems, so bring on the questions. I see one of my mentors around here somewhere. I'm sure he's ready to go. I like to cook, but not for myself. Been coding for about 10 years, just for fun. I probably should be getting paid more, but I joined the Army instead. And just a little boilerplate there. This is all my personal research. I do not speak on behalf of the DoD or the Army. This is me. Perfect. All right, so once the ChatGPT hype came along, I immediately thought this is going to be really good for phishing. I immediately started coding with the API to see sort of how we could do once we start scraping and collecting data together to put together a tool for red teaming. The really big value add with the ChatGPT, or I guess the scary thing, is that it takes us to unlimited scale, but perhaps more importantly, it takes away the barrier to entry for all of the threat actors that might have had a language barrier or even a skill barrier. So now somebody who was scamming your grandma for her life savings can now go after all the small businesses in town. So typically, this kind of stuff was done without group. You didn't have any trust. You're just emailing somebody and hoping that they will respond. But with chatbots, you have that interactivity. So that creates the opportunity to have really high-fidelity communications in an in-group situation. So you can build some rapport with the target before you engage. LinkedIn, we're going to talk a little bit about that. It's definitely the main target, the main threat vector for this, because you're saying exactly where you work. So the attack, sort of the kill chain, if you will, for this is divided into 9 stages. We start with target acquisition. We basically figure out what group of people meet our target profile. We figure out what they care about based on every social media post that they've ever made. And then we generate a persona to attack them specifically. With the persona, you typically, if you look at somebody's profile and it's got nothing on it, you're not going to trust them very much. So there's an incubation period. We'll talk about that. We build some rapport, and then we actually reach out through a direct messaging feature of whatever social media platform you're on. Then with the engagement, we wait a little bit, and finally, after an optional step of trying to get some contact info just in case the actual engagement follow-up fails, we deliver some kind of payload, whatever you want. And we'll talk a little bit more about the specifics of that. All right, target acquisition. So you literally write a prompt. So this is based on the tool that I set up. You are talking to GPT essentially right from the start. You're saying, I want to attack system administrators on small utility companies in South USA. And then it will go out, for example, on Reddit or LinkedIn and find everybody who meets that target profile. So let's go to the next slide. So you want to iterate over basically every piece of data that every person on the social media platform is putting out there. And normally, it would be very hard to figure out, to go through every post somebody's made and figure out, oh, this is actually a sysadmin, because people are typically a little bit careful. They're not necessarily going to say, hey, I'm a system administrator for the local utility company, hopefully. But you can, if you go through all of the things that they've ever posted, kind of figure that out. And GPT is actually pretty good at doing it. So it starts with a worker node. Essentially, this is just a process that you're running. It can be in a Kubernetes container. It can be on your desktop. Essentially, you can scale it you can run as many of these in parallel as you want. So you've got an agent on there, which is just a process that is creating your persona and taking the actions. You've got a browser automator that is automating. I use Selenium. It's just a tool a lot of people use for quality control with their applications, and you scrape the website. You go through all the elements, find the posts on their account, and pull all that into your whatever programming language you like to use. So then we create an identity pool from that, and we're leveraging, of course, the GPT-4 API, and we're going to end up using Midjourney. Even though they don't have an API, they're one of the best image generation. It's easy. You don't have to set up your own model that way. There is a community API that you can use. And so you're just going to start reaching out to these social media platforms and pulling in data. And then we'll start filling our identity pool. So once we have our target, we're gonna go through everything that they've ever done and put it all in one place, basically. So you will have every post, comment, whatever, you put them all together, and then you start pulling out details. So you write a prompt in GPT that says basically, hey, for this post, can I ascertain what kind of job this person has or what their dog's name is? And you'll make a whole list of details that might be interesting to you aside from just your target profile, because this stuff could come in useful later for password brute forcing. Once you put all that together, you're going to generate a persona, and this is where it starts to get pretty scary. You can make a really credible fake persona designed specifically to target one particular individual, which traditionally, that would be a very high-level tactic. You would only see that happen with whaling, with really valuable people, but now you can do it for basically everybody. So these are profile pictures generated by Midjourney. You can pull these in through an API. It might be a little... yeah, you can read that at the bottom. It's just, you can Google prompts to make a photorealistic generation. Basically, it's just pulling in all the camera data and stuff like that to tell it wants a realistic photo. And so, yeah, if your target's a guy, you might generate a pretty lady to do the attack. And if they reverse image search, of course, with the power of generative AI, that picture is completely unique. So can't really figure it out too easily. So then with incubation, you are going to give it some time, wait days, weeks in between posts. However patient you are, you will make this persona look realistic by generating posts and comments that are specifically designed to attract the target that you're going after. So when they look through that history, once it reaches out, once the fake persona reaches out, they will see things that they relate to. And it's all going to be written in perfect English or whatever language that the target speaks. And so there you can see that's basically the same chart we had earlier, except for now, instead of looking at content, we are just creating new fake content. All right, report building. Essentially, instead of just reaching directly out through a DM, which still can be kind of sketchy, just depending on the platform and the person, you can start to build rapport in an easier way. You might want to like somebody's post. If it's LinkedIn, they'll see, oh, this person liked my post. If it's Reddit, maybe you comment on the post, on one post. If it's LinkedIn, maybe you spend a week kind of liking a post or reposting somebody's content, maybe even posting a comment in response, and then you engage with the target. So the way that the engagement works, you can define any engagement profile that you want in the tool that I developed in ChatAPT, but the one that I thought was really effective, I basically ask for help. So I say, okay, I've built a target profile on this person. This is what they care about. Here's their whole summary. And this is all going into the prompt to GPT. And then you say, essentially, can you help me? I see that you posted this thing about building your own PC, and you had this specific part, and I'm trying to get into that. Please help me out. And so most people, just with the good nature, they'll respond to that, especially if it's believable. And it actually is pretty believable, as we will get into in just a second here. So finally, after you reach out with that, you're going to wait. So you just, the chat bot will essentially try to end the conversation. Like, thank you, I appreciate your help. I'll look into this. And it just waits. Optionally, I didn't develop this into the tool, but you could just say, hey, is there another way that I can reach you? It'll make up some excuse for why it needs to reach them. Usually it says, well, I need to send you a file or whatever. And you can get some extra contact info. That way, in this next step where we actually try to send a payload, if it fails and they realize, well, this is sketchy, that file extension looks weird, you'll already have some progress towards your next attack. So get that extra piece of contact info. That can be a good step. All right, and with payload delivery, this is really up to the red teamer. You can send, the way that the API handles it, that the tool handles it, is it will reach out and say, okay, remember we talked about this thing? I've been studying that for like 2 weeks. I wrote an article about it. Would you help me out? Like, would you proofread this for me? And that can be a website link. It could be a PDF, .exe, or a .zip, now that somebody decided to add that to the TLDs. And it's really convincing. So we will get to a case study that I did. I had over 100 volunteers on a Reddit post that I made to let me basically assess their account and send them a phishing message. So if you guys want to actually see that whole case study, that will link you directly to it. Promise you, I'm not phishing you. I promise. So yeah, that has over 100 participants. You can actually see how GPT was able to summarize their entire account. And it's some pretty interesting stuff. A little bit of it is X-rated, I will warn you. I mean, it was Reddit. What did you expect? All right, so this is an example. GPT does tend to be a little bit wordy, and that was some feedback that I got early in the development of the tool. But with the right prompt engineering, you can actually work past that. This was just a little bit of a wordier example, but you can get it down. Basically, with multiple stages of prompts, you basically say, hey, this seems a little bit wordy. Can you shorten it? And it just does it for you. So you can get it less. But this one's pretty good. I mean, I would probably believe that was a real person asking me the question. So then, based on that summary, you ask a question like I set up earlier. Hey, I'm new to this thing. I saw that you posted about it. Have you looked into this? Can you help me out? Any tips? And so that's going to work pretty well. Most of the people in that case study that did respond, they were pretty impressed. I gave them a selection of 4 different prompts. I was basically doing some A/B testing the lazy way, 4 at a time. And at least one of the 4 prompts, if not 2 or 3 of the prompts, most people said they would have responded to. So I'm not sure that you're going to be able to train people to skip that. All right, so future predictions, where this goes from here. People have a lot more incentive than I do. Just one guy working on his nights and weekends to code this thing. People that are making millions of dollars, I'm sure, have something much more advanced than I do, and they're probably already testing it out. I think that the next step in this is going to be end-to-end. So AI will get the initial access, and then it will complete the engagement. I've seen people already produce proof of concepts where they have created a beacon on target that reaches back out to the GPT or some other LLM API and asks for next steps. Says, hey, here's what the directory structure looks like. Here's my permissions. Here's what I can do. What's next? And GPT will actually do lateral movement automatically. So then, of course, we have video, voice, and text. I'm sure some of you have seen some stories about that lately. That just makes it all the more scary. I haven't even dove into the potential there. Mitigation. Okay, so the 2 primary vectors for mitigation are going to be platform level and user level. Now, I did not violate the LinkedIn user agreement by bypassing all of their platform protections against spotting measures, but I do have an anonymous friend who might have done some research. Please don't ban me from LinkedIn. And then user level, of course, which is going to be your more traditional mitigation. So the user level mitigation, I think that I have a bit of an unpopular opinion that user training is not really going to fix this problem. I think we've been doing user training for a very long time. I think people are not easy to control at scale, and the more people you have, the more it costs to train them, and the more likelihood that one of them is going to make the mistake. And you only need one mistake for the attacker to get that initial access. But I'm not saying don't do it, just think about the ROI. Don't use defense in depth as an excuse to do everything, but not really do any one thing really well. All right, so I think AI agents in the browser would be a really good next step. I won't go too in-depth on that, but there are privacy concerns. It would need to be in a way that the user owns their data and the employer pays for the service, and that all the employer can get out of it is a basic alert, so then they can initiate some SOAR response and maybe lock down that user's credentials a little bit if they realize, hey, this guy might have just clicked on a malicious link. Obviously, hardware tokens are great if you can get buy-in from your company to go for it. FIDO2 is pretty cool. I've been a big fan and proponent of secure by design operating systems. 2 examples are iOS and Chrome OS. Now, those are hard to sell to organizations today. The web app workflow is not quite there. You can get buy-in from smaller companies to do this sort of thing, and that way, once the attacker gets in, they are nowhere because they're in a web browser. They're in a container. We can containerize Windows processes this way, I think. Potentially, it's a little more complicated, but I'm a big fan of reducing the attack surface rather than trying to address this extremely complicated threat. All right, platform level mitigation, and we are running out of time, so I will speed through this. My anonymous friend who did the research on LinkedIn told me that they have extremely good bot detection. Like, you can bypass their CAPTCHA. So let's say you use the accessibility features to grab the audio version of a CAPTCHA, and then you passed it to OpenAI's Whisper API, the voice transcription API, and then got the answer to the CAPTCHA, provide the correct answer, and then they still tell you to kick rocks. There are over 200 different properties in the browser to identify you. It is not just your IP address, and you can disable your graphics card or whatever in your web browser to get rid of canvas fingerprinting, but that does not do the whole trick. And besides, that's kind of suspicious anyway. Also, your VPNs don't work. WebRTC will just connect right past it because it's going over UDP. And so if you think that you're anonymous when you're using your typical VPN, you're probably not. So there's a lot of things that the platforms can do to sort of win that fight. You can force the attacker to use residential proxies, which is just a form of proxy that someone has scammed your grandmother into downloading a piece of software that is then pivoting your connection to that proxy. So it doesn't come up as proxy infrastructure when the platform detects it, but it's expensive. So it can be done. Don't think that blacklisting IPs is going to work. We talked about the CAPTCHA defeat. We got there. Okay. Any questions? I've got prizes, by the way. They told me to tell you that. Do I have prizes? Maybe we're out of prizes. All right, then I'm not going to get any questions. Oh. Where's it? Oh.
You have to deal with ChatAPT blocking your requests to asking it to do different things.
How much did I have to deal with the safety features of ChatGPT? Almost never. It doesn't do much. I literally got ChatGPT to write me, using the API, by the way, not the actual ChatGPT web app, but the API. It can write really good obfuscated code to bypass whatever detections you want. You just ask it, like, hey, I've got these pesky detections in my way. Can you just like write me some obfuscated bash? It will do it. Any other questions? Bypass the problems of the security features? Yes. Honestly, I didn't have to bypass anything. It just didn't complain. I don't know. Other people have told me that they've run into a few problems. I haven't. I think it's because you're not directly, in a lot of these cases, asking it to do something wrong. You're just saying, hey, look at this content. And you're not saying, hey, let's do something bad. You're just saying, write a message that is asking for help, essentially. So you kind of, I don't think the AI platform security stuff is really going to go very far, because at the end of the day, AI is just software connected to a bunch of GPUs, and we can't regulate away viruses and malware, so why would we be able to regulate the malicious use of AI? It's a bunch of political grandstanding as far as I can tell, honestly. That is a very complex discussion that we don't have time for right now, but I would be happy to talk with you after this.
One more question. Sorry, over here.
Oh.
So when you were describing red teaming with ChatGPT that was guiding the process, when you get to sort of like you're enumerating the host and then it's pointing back and asking, well, what's the next step? Is that automated, or is it more just guiding the researcher in the engagement?
The paper that I read on that, it was fully automated. He was actually successfully navigating laterally through the environment without any user input.
Quick question. How many years away do you think it is until we get a video version of this? Like, for web shadows and stuff like that?
You asked the wrong question. It won't be years. Yeah.
I don't know if that's odd, but loud enough. What cybersecurity threat targeting our nation's democracy concerns you the most?
So I thought when I started developing this thing about making a proof of concept for spreading propaganda, essentially, that is the answer to your question. I think that propaganda, being able to be put out there in really high fidelity at infinite scale, I don't have many answers for that. It's a hard question. Anything else? I think we're about out of time, so good. Thanks.